Hello and welcome. In today's video I'm going to share with you Ark's 5 best fantasy creatures, and before we get into it, make sure to like and subscribe as it really does help the channel. In at number 5 is the Griffin. Now the Griffin can be found on a wealth of maps, and I think on Valguero there is even a Griffin trench, but my go-to map for taming Griffins is always and will always be Ark Raasclark. Raasclark is a great shout for taming Griffins, and every Ark player has access to it, maybe apart from mobile and Switch players. But either way, the Griffin is an absolutely insane flyer that has a wealth of special abilities. Namely, you can actually equip guns on this thing, so you can actually shoot off of it while still riding it. And actually, back in the day, this was really great for taming Quetzals, but now with the net gun, the Quetzal really isn't that difficult of a solo tame anymore, and the Griffins aren't really needed. That is, if you actually do have the net gun. Some players will still not have access to it, and the Griffin will be the best option. But also, on top of that, it has many abilities around flying. Namely, its gliding ability, which from this B-roll you would have already seen quite a lot of. And this is really useful as you can quickly get across the map with ease, and if you dive bomb onto creatures, it will do damage. This Bronto was actually a relatively easy kill, and you can definitely kill creatures far bigger than it. But also on Raasclark, the Griffin is great for raiding Wyvern trenches, as you can simply go in, take an egg, and get out with absolutely no problem. As with that dive bomb ability, the Griffin is going to be way faster than a Wyvern ever could. In at number 4 is the Gasbags. This thing actually is not exclusive to Extinction. That is a misconception that I've heard before, and I myself used to believe as well. But these things are not exclusive to Extinction, which is partly why they are on this list as well. But there are some creatures on this list that are definitely not available for non-DLC Ark players. But I should stop talking about that, and I should talk about what the Gasbags actually does to make it a great and wonderful creature that every Ark player should tame at some point. Firstly, this thing is a great flyer, if you can call it a flyer, and instead of having to level up stamina for this thing, you're going to level up its oxygen, as then it can produce more gas and then fly for longer distances. The only thing is though, these things aren't the easiest to control at all, and I definitely did struggle quite a lot, and I died a few times when recording this B-roll, which was actually quite a while ago now. Either way, the Gasbags is definitely a creature worth flying, and you don't even need a saddle to ride on this thing. The saddle is only there if you want 2 people riding on it, so the Gasbags is a great shout if you're travelling with your Ark friend, whoever that may be. In terms of Gasbag uses, apart from just flying around and being a great travel creature, this thing is a great harvester of things like metal. It has an incredibly good weight stat, and it really will not let you down. Obviously this thing isn't going to gather the metal itself, but it is definitely great, like the RG, for gathering those kind of resources. Obviously the RG isn't on this list because it is not a fantasy creature. They actually did exist at some point. And as you can see here, I really wasn't great at controlling the Gasbags, which is my one main downside for them. They definitely need to be learnt. In at number 3 is the Snow Owl. Now you may say, well, Snow Owls exist in real life. This is not a fantasy creature. But if you do look at Ark's list of fantasy creatures, the Snow Owl is on there. I was dictating about actually putting this thing on the list, as I was unsure if it was a fantasy creature, but I checked the list and it is on there, so I am going to talk about this thing, because this thing is an absolutely insane flyer, which deserves to be on this list, and deserves the tame as well, as it is not an exclusive tame to Extinction. I think you'll find it on maps like Fjorda. Compared to the Griffin, the Snow Owl also does have that sacred dive bomb ability, but it is implemented so much better on the Snow Owl. It just feels smoother and so much more satisfying. I'm sure it isn't actually any better than the Griffins, but it is just so much nicer to use. Also, these things have a heat seeking like UV ability where you can see any creatures that radiate off heat, and that is actually every creature, because no creature doesn't do that. This is great for PvP players if you need to find that player that is simply lost in a bush. Also, you'll need to level up stamina, as these things can heal creatures. You'll probably want to heal your creatures, but take into mind that they will also heal enemy creatures and wild creatures as well. But this can be really good if you're taming, as you may have really knocked out most of the health on your creature by shooting so many tranks at it, and you can just quickly go and heal it up with the Snow Owl instead of having to wait for absolutely ages for that Rex or whatever you're taming that its health is so low for it to actually bring its health back up to a reasonable level where you can trank it again. And actually you'll have to use less tranks overall, as its torpor will be going down in that period as well. And with the Snow Owl you can just quickly do it, and it is simply done like that. On Extinction, these things really are the go-to, but also on maps like Fjorda, which I think you can find them on, they would definitely be my go-to as well, as they have a reasonable weight stat and are very comparable to the RG for gathering metal. In at number 2 is the Lightning Wyvern. Now the Lightning Wyvern really is an absolutely insane tame. Obviously there are loads of other Wyverns as well, but the Lightning Wyvern is just so good, it needs to be on this list compared to any other Wyvern, as it is definitely the go-to Wyvern of choice. It's not really worth taming the others, unless you're obviously going for looks, or you just largely prefer those other creatures from the Lightning Wyvern. In my opinion, the Lightning Wyvern is just the go-to, because it's actually, like, its lightning ability releases torpor as well. Obviously you're not going to be knocking out any creature with this, but it is just really nice to have, as it can spook enemy players off, and actually in some cases even knock them out, especially if you're chasing after a player on a Pteranodon, and Pteranodons have really low torpidity. You actually may be able to knock out that Pteranodon, considering that the Pteranodon actually has a high health stat, because the Wyvern is definitely going to be dealing a lot of damage to it. Also, these things aren't actually too bad at gathering wood. If you press C on your keyboard, you'll be able to gather a lot of wood with its wing flap ability. But also the Wyvern can pick up a wealth of creatures. I think it's similar to the RG, but there may be a few more creatures on the list. Probably more like what the Quetzal can, but I'm not sure if these things can pick up mammoths. Sadly, these things do not have armor. And finally, in at number 1 is the Reaper. Now you can't lie, this is a fantasy creature, and definitely one to be completely and utterly celebrated. The Reaper is an absolutely insane creature that if you have Arboration or Genesis Part 2, you should definitely tame. Especially if you have Genesis Part 2, as Raasclark has a really easy taming method, which makes the Reaper able to be your first Arc tame on Gen 2. If you want to check that out, definitely head over to Raasclark's channel and just search for easiest Reaper tame, and it will come up right then and there. I don't know the exact details of how you do it, but it is an absolutely insane tip that I have definitely used before in the past. The Reaper, once tamed, actually does have a very interesting taming method, is an absolute beast. These things deal so much damage, they have a very reasonable stamina stat, their weight is actually pretty decent as well, and their health stat is definitely something to look forward to, unless you get in a situation like I did here, but still their mobility is good enough that you can get out of situations like that. The Reaper is definitely a fast and agile creature, and it will definitely strike awe into the noobs that may be treading your server. But anyway, that is the end of today's video, and I hope that you enjoyed. Comment below your top 5 fantasy creatures in the comments down below, and I will see you all later. Bye.